The night I found out, I was sitting on the bathroom floor at 2 in the morning, nursing my 6-week-old daughter, when my husband's phone lit up on the counter next to the sink. He had left it there when he came in to brush his teeth, and then gone back to bed. I wasn't snooping. I wasn't suspicious. I was just exhausted, and the glow of that screen was the only light in the room. The preview of the text was 4 words long. 4 words I will never forget. Miss you so much. And the contact name was just a letter. Just the letter K. I put my daughter down in her bassinet, picked up that phone, and my entire life changed in about 90 seconds. I want you to stay with me here, because this story does not go the way you think it goes. Most people, when they find out their husband is cheating 6 weeks after they've given birth, they cry, they scream, or they beg, or they fall apart completely. I understand that. I have no judgment for anyone who has done any of those things. But I didn't do any of them. What I did instead was put the phone back exactly where he left it, go back to the bedroom, lie down next to the man I had just married 2 years earlier, and stare at the ceiling until the sun came up. And while I stared at that ceiling, I made a decision that would take 3 months to execute. I decided that I was not going to let him know that I knew. Not until I was ready. His name is Marcus. We had been together for 4 years before we got married, and I had genuinely believed we were solid. He was charming, funny, the kind of man who remembered small things. Your favorite order at a restaurant, the name of your childhood dog. I fell hard for him. We got married in a small ceremony, just family and close friends, and then almost immediately I got pregnant. The pregnancy was difficult. I was sick for most of the first trimester, exhausted through the second, and by the third, I was so uncomfortable I could barely sleep. Marcus was supportive on the surface. He said the right things. But looking back now, I can see exactly when he started pulling away. It was around month 5. The late nights at work started. The phone that was always face down on the table. The way he would leave the room to take calls. I noticed all of it, but I told myself I was being paranoid. I made excuses for him inside my own head, and that, I think, is the thing that still makes me the most angry. So there I was, 6 weeks postpartum, still bleeding, still struggling to breastfeed, still figuring out how to be a mother, and I had just read enough of his messages to know that the woman he was texting, Kay, was someone he had been seeing for at least 4 months. Her name was Kayla. She was 26, 3 years younger than me, no kids, worked at the same company he did in a different department. From what I could piece together in those 90 seconds, she knew about me. She knew about the baby. And she didn't care. Here is the part where I have to be honest about something uncomfortable. I was not calm, because I was strong. I was calm because I was in shock. The kind of shock that slows everything down and makes you feel like you are watching your own life from a small distance. But somewhere inside that shock, a very cold, very clear part of my brain woke up and started thinking. And what it thought was this: if I confront him right now, I lose. He apologizes, or he doesn't. We fight, or we don't. But either way, I am 6 weeks postpartum, with no income of my own, no apartment in my name, no plan. I had taken maternity leave from my job as a project manager, and my savings were not enough to start over on. If I blew everything up that night, I would be negotiating my own future from the weakest possible position. So I didn't. What I did instead was read. Every night after he fell asleep, I went through his phone. I read months of messages. I learned everything. I learned that Kayla called him babe and that he called her beautiful. I learned that he had told her our marriage was already falling apart before she came along, which was a lie. I learned that he had described me, his wife, the mother of his child, as checked out and not the same person anymore. And I learned, most importantly, exactly what he wanted from her that he felt he wasn't getting from me. He wanted to feel desired. He wanted spontaneity. He wanted a woman who was present and engaged and interested in him. He wanted, in short, to feel like a priority. Now, I want you to understand something about what I am about to tell you. I am not sharing this because I think what I did was the only way or even the right way for everyone. I am sharing it because it is what I chose, and because I need you to understand the level of intentionality behind every single thing I did over the next 3 months. This was not desperation. This was not me trying to save my marriage out of fear. I had already decided the marriage was over. What I was doing was making sure that when it ended on my terms, with my finances secured, my daughter protected, and my husband fully, completely, devastatingly aware of exactly what he was losing. I hired a family law attorney in week 2. I did it on a Tuesday afternoon while Marcus was at work and my mother was watching the baby. I sat in that office and I laid out the entire situation, and I asked her one question: what do I need to do to make sure I am in the strongest possible position when I file? I took notes, and then I went home and I started phase 2. I became, over the course of the next several weeks, everything Marcus had told Kayla he wished I was. I started getting up early and making breakfast. I started asking about his day with genuine seeming interest. I started touching him more, laughing at his jokes, suggesting we do things together on weekends. I got a postpartum trainer, not for him, I want to be clear, but because I needed to feel strong in my own body, and it also served the plan. I started dressing differently, putting in effort in the mornings, wearing things I knew he liked. I watched his reactions carefully. I was a scientist, studying a subject, and it worked. God help me, it worked faster than I expected. Within 3 weeks, I could see the shift. He was coming home earlier. He was looking at me differently. He was initiating conversation instead of retreating to his phone. He started being affectionate in small ways: a hand on my back in the kitchen, a kiss on the top of my head when he passed me on the couch. And here's the thing that I did not fully anticipate. Watching him fall back in love with me did not feel good. It felt like watching someone walk cheerfully toward a cliff. I knew what was at the bottom. He had absolutely no idea. Meanwhile, I was also, very quietly, making his relationship with Kayla harder to maintain. I am not going to pretend I feel bad about this part. I started scheduling things on evenings he typically disappeared: dinner with his parents, a friend's birthday, a work event I really needed him at. I became the kind of engaged, present wife who had opinions about the calendar. He couldn't easily disappear for hours anymore without it being obvious. I could tell from the messages, which I was still reading every night, that Kayla was getting frustrated. She was asking when they were going to spend real time together. She was pushing for more, and Marcus, caught between the suddenly revived warmth of his home life and a mistress who was escalating her demands, was starting to feel the pressure. By month 2, I had signed a lease on an apartment. It was a 2-bedroom, close to my mother, in a good school district. I paid the deposit out of my own savings account, which I had quietly opened in my name only. I had also, on my attorney's advice, begun documenting everything: his income, our joint assets, the mortgage on our house, the retirement accounts. I was building a picture, a complete, detailed, legally admissible picture of our shared financial life. My attorney was pleased. She said I was one of the most prepared clients she had ever worked with. I told her I had good motivation. Somewhere in the middle of month 3, Marcus ended it with Kayla. I know the exact date because I read the message thread that night. It was a Wednesday. He told her he had realized he was still in love with his wife, that becoming a father had changed him, that he was sorry but he needed to do the right thing. She did not take it well. There were several messages from her that I will not repeat in detail, but the summary is: she was furious, she felt used, and she told him exactly what she thought of him. He did not respond after a certain point. He just went quiet. That night, he came downstairs while I was feeding the baby in the living room, and he sat down next to me on the couch, and he put his arm around me, and he said, "I just want you to know I'm so grateful for you, for this family." And I looked at him, and I smiled, and I said, "Me too." I had the papers served 11 days later. I had coordinated everything with my attorney down to the timing. My mother had already moved the majority of my and the baby's belongings to the new apartment over the course of 2 separate weekday mornings while Marcus was at work. The things that were mine, the things that were the baby's, the things we had agreed in the settlement terms would go with me. My attorney had filed the petition. I had the custody proposal ready. Primary physical custody with me, generous visitation for Marcus, structured and specific. An actual physical folder with dividers and tabs, because I am a project manager, and apparently I cannot stop being one even when I am dismantling my own marriage. The process server came to the house on a Thursday evening. Marcus had just gotten home from work. I was standing in the kitchen when it happened. I heard the knock, heard the door open, heard the brief exchange of words. And then I heard silence. And then I heard him say my name. He came into the kitchen holding the envelope. His face was, I don't have a perfect word for it. It was the face of a man who has just stepped on a piece of floor he believed was solid and found nothing underneath it. Confusion first, then a kind of dawning, terrible understanding. He looked at me and he said, "What is this?" And I said, very quietly, "It's divorce papers, Marcus." He said, "I don't understand. Things have been so good. I thought we were doing better." And I said, "I know you did." He asked me if there was someone else. The irony of that question almost made me laugh out loud, but I kept my face completely still. I told him I had simply realized, over the past several months, that I deserved more than what our marriage had been. He started to argue, to say that things had changed, that he had changed, that he was committed to us. And I listened to every word. I let him finish, and then I told him that I had already signed a lease, that the baby and I would be moving within the week, that I had a custody proposal in the folder on the counter and I hoped he would review it with his own attorney, and that I wished him genuinely well. I want to be honest about that because I think it matters. He sat down at the kitchen table and he cried, and a part of me, a small, distant part, felt the weight of that. Not guilt, exactly. Something more complicated. Grief, maybe, for the marriage I had thought I had before I found out who he actually was. For the version of him I had loved before he showed me I shouldn't. But I did not sit down. I did not comfort him. I picked up my daughter from her bouncer, I put on her little jacket, and I walked out of that kitchen. I want to tell you what the next few weeks looked like, because I think this part gets left out of stories like this. It was not triumphant. It was not a movie ending where the music swells and the woman walks away in slow motion looking beautiful and vindicated. There were nights in that new apartment when the baby wouldn't sleep, and I was alone and exhausted, and I cried into a burp cloth because I had wanted my marriage to be real, and it wasn't. There were moments when Marcus called and left voicemails that were genuinely remorseful, and I had to resist the very human urge to believe that remorse meant something. It didn't change what he had done. It didn't change what I had decided. Remorse is not a plan. Remorse is not a guarantee, and I had learned, in those 3 months, that I was very good at making plans. The divorce was finalized 4 months after I served him. We settled without going to trial. I got primary custody of our daughter. I got a fair division of the assets. I kept my name on the mortgage settlement proceeds. Marcus got his visitation schedule, and to his credit, he has shown up for it consistently. Whatever he is as a husband, he is trying to be a present father, and I will not take that from him or from our daughter. She deserves to have both of her parents love her. Kayla, as far as I know, moved on. I don't think about her very much. She was not the villain of my story. She was a complication in it, but the person who made vows to me was Marcus. She owed me nothing. He owed me everything. And he chose to throw it away, while I was still recovering from bringing his child into the world. That is the thing I come back to when I start to feel any softness toward him. 6 weeks postpartum. I was 6 weeks postpartum. People ask me sometimes if I feel bad about the way I did it. About the 3 months of performance, the calculated warmth, the deliberate strategy. And I think about that question seriously before I answer it. Here is what I have come to. I did not lie to him about anything that mattered. I did not fabricate evidence or destroy his life or turn his family against him. I did not expose him publicly or go after his job. I simply chose not to show my hand until I was holding all the cards. I chose to protect myself and my daughter before I blew up the only home she had ever known. I chose to be strategic at a moment when falling apart would have cost me everything. If that makes me calculating, then I am calculating. I have been called worse things for making smarter choices. My daughter is 14 months old now. She is the funniest, most determined little person I have ever met. She has her father's eyes and, apparently, my stubbornness, which her pediatrician says with a smile and which I take as a compliment. My apartment is small, but it is mine. My life is quieter than it used to be and more honest than it has ever been. I sleep well. I sleep very, very well. And sometimes, in the quiet of the evening when she is finally asleep and the apartment is still, I think about that bathroom floor, the glow of the phone, and I think about the woman who sat there in the dark nursing her baby and decided, in the middle of the most vulnerable moment of her life, that she was not going to be a victim of someone else's choices, that she was going to think, that she was going to plan, that she was going to win. She did, we did, and we are just getting started.